Right, so today's video is kind of a machine modification trial, call it what you will. So I'll just show you this quickly. Taking the engine out of this. And if you notice, there's an awful lot of engine oil because this machine came back, was leaking a bit of oil, and the process of running it, it's decided to, something's happened where it's basically chucked all the oil out the top of the engine. So that's covered the machine. So the engine's basically written off. It's not worth repairing. Now, as you might know from previous videos, I'm trying to convert over to petrol. But I've got a bit of a delay in doing that. I'm waiting for a tank to be made. And there's various other things going on which you'll see in future videos. So I need to get this machine up and running. So in the meantime, I've managed to find quite a reasonable second-hand OC95 off of eBay. Nice genuine seller from up north. Engine runs, I've had it running absolutely fine. Does smoke a little bit, but I think it might be contaminated fuel. There's a drop of oil in the fuel, so it's just coughing out a bit of white smoke. So anyway, the modification that we're going to be making is this. So on previous videos, when I've done machine setup with the new engine, you'll notice I've cut this shaft down to fit the standard coupling on here and the PTO coupler which goes on there. So the PTO coupler that comes with the machine is this thing here. And then there's a nylon coupling that goes between the pump, which bolts on here, and the engine, which is on there. The problem with those nylon couplings is that they're not man enough for the job. I'm actually working on something in the background, which you'll see on a future video. But in the meantime, some years ago, I brought this. So this is a much bigger coupling. It's got an access hole there. And basically, it's this coupling here. So what we've got is we've got the end that goes on the shaft there with a splined tooth there. This rubber coupling then goes on there like that, and then this slip ring here goes over the rubber coupling, and then you've got this part which goes on the pump. So the beauty of that is, I don't have to cut the shaft down. This is much stronger. This has been specifically designed for the torque rating of this engine and the speed that the PTO is, or this PTO shaft is going to be running at, and the horsepower that it's also putting through. So this should last a lot longer because I'm fed up with the couplings breaking. These are quite cheap to replace. But it does present itself with a couple of challenges. This is 3 inches longer than the existing coupling, which means that when I mount the engine's going to have to be pulled further back. Now I have got a modified frame which I'm going to fit on this machine, but in the meantime I'm going to bolt this onto the engine, mount this coupling, mount the pump, get all that on, and then I'm going to slide the engine in and see if I can get it all plumbed in. The other challenge is going to be the fuel filler is not going to line up, but I've got an idea for how that's going to work. Purely an experiment, also to use this because I brought this some time ago. It was quite expensive. I imported this from America. So if I can get this to work, this will get me out of trouble. Moving forwards, I'm not going to be going over to these engines brand new anyway. So, you know, at the end of the day, once this engine's written off, by which time I'd have engineered myself a way of fitting the petrol engines much easier. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to work on trying to fit this coupling on here, bolt all this on, and see where we go. So I'm just going to see if I can get this to slide over the shaft. I haven't got a keyway fitted on the shaft yet. This engine didn't actually come with a keyway, which is no big problem. I've got a box of them here, so I'll just find the right keyway to go. I need to really turn this shaft to get it to go so that the keyway is in the upright position, and then that should then slide over there. It's not particularly clear how far this goes on, but I think it's got to go on. It's just over the end of the shaft like that, and then I should be able to slide the keyway in there, which I think that's the right one. Oh yes, that's a good fit. So that's the keyway in. And that bit fits on there. Like that. There's a little grub screw there. So I'm going to have to tighten that up to hold that on, but I'm not going to do that until I've bolted this on to make sure this all lines up and the pump fits. So I'm going to find some bolts to go in here. They're just going to be cap head screws, the same as what hold the other one on, but the previous coupling was fitted to these holes. This one fits to these. So that should work quite nicely. We'll put that on over there. And there's an access hatch that goes on here, so at least if this breaks, you can get to it. You can't replace it very easily, but what you can do is you can undo that grub screw, slide that back, and then slide this forward, so then you should be able to get to that coupling. Or at least in theory, that's the plan. So, yeah, I'll work on getting some bolts fitted to that, and then we'll see if we can get the pump fitted. Right, so I've just fitted this modified base. So this is the old one. I've just put it on top for comparison. So previously the engine mounted here, and if I take this off, basically it's got an extra bar on the back with the hole drilled there, so it's 3 inches back. So the engine's going to sit 3 inches further back, which will give enough room for the PTO coupling to go in there. I've now got to take the pipes off the pump, get the pump out, bolt the pump onto there, which I'm not sure what screws are needed for that, so I have to investigate that. Slide the whole engine back in, and then connect the pipes up. Before I slide the engine in, I've got to just make sure that I've tightened up those grub screws on that coupling, and then that's all running true. And then hopefully that won't be changing for quite some time. I'm actually hoping that that will last as long as the engine lasts, because then I'll be going over to the petrol. This is a frame that I got Gary next door to modify some time ago, and I thought I was going to be going over to this system I'm trying now with the diesel engines, but I'm not going to be doing that. So at least I've got one made. I can try it on this and it should get this machine up and running. Right, I managed to fit the pump. There's an Allen key in there to tighten up. That was quite difficult to get to. Tighten that up. The only thing of slight concern is whether this is going to come loose and it will slide that way, because if it does, this will stop working. And I think also, being that this is an American coupling, the sizes are slightly different to metric. So I managed to find an Allen key to go in there. A couple of bolts in here, they're screwed in that way, and the fittings are back on. So I'm going to try and lift this engine in now with the forklift, bolt it back up and see where everything lines up. Right, so managed to fit all this in. Already I've had to make a modification because this fuel filter housing wouldn't fit back there because these parts were too short, so I've made some more rubber pipes up to extend this. That's done. And of course the issue is that fuel tank doesn't line up with that. So I've got a couple of options there. I've got some flexible pipe on order, which I'm hoping I can just go from there onto there. And I've also got some 90-degree elbows, aluminium elbows, different sizes. So I've got one that'll go inside this tank with the adapter on, and one on the outside of this adapter, and then a bit of rubber hose between the two. So for the moment I've managed to fill this up using a funnel, and I just want to see if I can start the machine. And then I'm going to go and test it on some concrete. This machine, or this engine, is smoking a little bit, but I think it just needs to run and get the fuel flushed through. So let's see if we can start it. Having done all this work, it doesn't start. It's going to be a bit disappointing. Okay, so back at this machine, a final little job. So the idea was I was going to I've brought these. I was going to try and kind of attached that one on there. So that would go on the end of the fuel filler. And then this one was going to go on the tank, but this is too high and that's too long. So that's the idea, it's not going to work. So back to the drawing board. What I've got is this here. This is quite flexible, so I'm hoping I can feed that in through there, attach it to the top of this tank here with a couple of Jubilee clips, and to the top of the fuel filler here. I'm just hoping there's enough stretch. It is fairly stretchy. Having said that, this was in one bit, and as I was stretching it earlier, it did manage to break, so fingers crossed that this will work. So if this does what I need it to do, then I'll be quite happy. Otherwise, it's going to be back to the drawing board. Okay, so we've got this made up now. Jubilee clip there, Jubilee clip there. There's the tank adapter. Just got to try and thread it in now and check that it all fits. Yes, that's going to be the next job. So let's see if I can get this fitted. I'll just put the camera off. Right, there we are. That's that little modification complete. Tightened up here, that's all put on, all tightened up under there, and I've got this cap screwed down. Just got to tighten this up a tad more here, and that can go straight back out on hire with that modification. Catch you on the next one.